Okay, so hopefully you can see this first screen. So today we're going to be talking about consistency. Now, consistency is a real superpower for building a strong brand. It's worth pointing out you don't as such own your brand. Other people own your brand because it's basically their perception of you. It's like your reputation. And you can influence this, though. You can influence the perception people have of you. And you can do this by ensuring your brand identity, your tone of voice, your message, etc. That they match up with how you want people to perceive you. So the best thing about consistency is that you need to be consistent in sending out the same brand identity, the visuals, your tone of voice, your message, so that people understand that it's you. And the main reason behind this is, it's often said there's 5 to 7 interactions or touch points for someone to recall a brand. Whether that's recall a brand or actually purchase from a brand, you've probably heard it takes people, 5 to 7 touch points to buy from you. Now, if your message, if your visuals, etc., are inconsistent, then it's unlikely they're going to understand that that touch point was with your company. Yeah, they're not going to attribute it to you. If they see an advert, but the colors are completely different from anything else you do. Morning, we're only just starting, so you haven't missed anything really, Vicky. Yeah, if it's not a consistent brand image, brand message, things like that, the interaction won't get attributed to you, and therefore you need more interactions with someone before they're happy to buy from you. Now, 23% increase in company revenue for those that have a consistent brand. Now, this could be due to a couple of things. Firstly, repeat business. We tend to buy from the same brands over and over again because we like that brand. We know it, we trust it, we believe in it, it's consistent. So therefore, you're much more likely to get repeat business. But equally, for those who, depending where you're positioned in the market, it means you can often position yourself for a sort of a higher perceived value or a more premium product. You mentioned certain brands and they command a higher price because of the perception that they are better quality or offer better value or whatever it is. So that's the reason that consistency is so important in your business and your brand. So today, what we're going to be looking at is your messaging. So consistency in your messaging, consistency in your visual identity, your tone of voice, which we're going to speak about as well. And hopefully I'll give a couple of little examples, but also your service. So consistency has to flow throughout everything that you do, because every touch point, every interaction is how someone forms an opinion of you. And I say of you because I think we should sort of personalize businesses, whether it's you or the brand, it's the same thing. It's a reputation, and you want to present yourself how you want people to perceive you. So if we talk about messaging, if you've got one clear message, it doesn't confuse people. Yeah. And this is very much like building a relationship. I mean, my sort of dating days are long gone. But if, one day you turned up and you're all happy to see the person, next day you cancelled, then you said, I love you. And then you treat them like rubbish. It's mixed messaging. It's confusing. It's like, where do I stand? And it's the same with building that reputation for your business. You want to be saying the same message to the same target audience. Now, it's quite common in businesses you have a few different parts to that business or maybe target audiences. That's fine, but make sure that the message to that specific audience is consistent. And there's a saying, what gets repeated gets remembered. And you can just keep going over and over the same thing. I often say this about social media content. I mean, if anyone watches my videos over the last year, actually, I'm pretty much saying the same 3 things over and over and over again. And to me, it sometimes gets a little bit, boring, or you feel like, oh, I'm just repeating myself. But, the reason we revise for exams is because it doesn't go in first time. We have to keep going over and over it. And it's the same. You've just got to keep repeating the same message. You can find new ways to deliver it, but the same message over and over, because yeah, what gets repeated gets remembered. Um, and I know a few of you here have done networking. A lot of people have taglines and things like that. Again, repeating it, repeating it, repeating it. You need that one consistent message. And actually, if you look at some of the big brands, we start to remember those taglines. I met up with some school friends. We had a school reunion last year. Met a few of them at the weekend. We were talking about silly things from school, and we were saying about people getting tangoed and things like that. And you think, oh yeah, I remember that. And would you give someone your last Rolo? And these little lines get remembered because they've been repeated and repeated, and they almost become annoying adverts, but you start to remember them. So whatever your message is, make sure it's consistent, make sure that you repeat it as often as you can. 81% of consumers need to trust a brand to consider buying from it. And trust comes from consistency. Exactly like I was saying with building a personal relationship. If people, you'd get it. You trust someone who turns up when they say they're going to turn up. If they're sometimes early, sometimes late, it becomes inconsistent. So people need to trust you to buy. I'm guessing the 19% of people who buy just from an online TikTok shop or Temu or one of the other things, but generally we want to feel that our money is safe. So now on to visual. Now, visual is probably the slightly easier way to be consistent, because you really do control a lot of the visual that you put out. Sometimes with messaging, you might have said something, but we know that we want other people to repeat that message. But actually with visual, you own it. There's 55% brand first impressions are visual. And I think that's key. Probably our first interaction with someone, it might be landing on their website. It might be seeing a social post. It might be seeing their packaging on a store. It might be seeing a van. It might be seeing workwear, whatever it is. You need to make a great first impression. It is what it is. When I say, we all judge people and judge brands and judge businesses as soon as we see them. We do. It'd be lovely if we didn't, but we do, and we base a lot of this on the visuals. And a strong brand that has consistently used the same visual starts to get recognized just by its color or just by small little parts. I mean, if I chuck this up here, I think most of you can probably guess what brand that is. It doesn't even say it, but that it's Coke, and they obviously use it across every little touch point. You can see all these posters. You just know it's them because they're consistent in their visuals. And I saw this great social media post. It was actually by Audi, but they tagged Lidl in it. I think that was a Romanian gymnast at the Olympics. But the colours just look very Lidl. With I just thought that's brilliant. That I love supermarkets. I'll probably mention supermarkets today, but I relate to them a lot with marketing. I think in a couple of weeks' time, I'm doing a presentation on positioning, and I often use supermarkets as an example for where you position yourself in the market. Basically, whether I often say to people, are you Lidl, are you Aldi? And there's nothing wrong with any of them. Lidl, Aldi, you move up, you might have Asda, and then your Tesco's, Sainsbury's, and then you might go M&S, and at the top you've got Waitrose, or whatever it is. So but I just love this, and it just shows that actually the power of just a couple of colors can really be part of your visual identity. Now, where can you put consistent visuals? Well, obviously your website. Make sure that uses the same fonts and the same colors and the logo that you've set out for your business. On social media platforms, things like profile pictures. If you're designing adverts or posters, make sure again the font is the same, the colors the same. If you're using real photos. I mean, Sarah's here. She's a commercial photographer, but try and get a consistent look to your images. One of the issues with using lots of stock images is they can look completely different. You might get away with one, but if you're trying to use 20 on a website, it becomes very inconsistent. Arguably, if you get the same photographer, so on and so on. But my point being, if you can get consistent images, it's perfect. yeah, vans, uniform, anything like that, anywhere that you can brand yourself. I'm not a big fan of sort of, just everything being a badging exercise. You don't just have to stick a logo on everything, but equally, you can, yeah, if you've got it on your uniform, it matches the van, it matches the website someone went on when they booked, the service, whatever it is, it just helps there to be consistency. And as I said at the start, consistency builds trust, and we buy from companies that we trust. When it comes to your logo, a lot of the big brands, actually, Facebook are just using as an example, but you can go on and download their complete logo pack and brand guidelines, and they tell you how it should be used. So, if it's on white, it's the blue, is their primary logo. The over imagery, it's interesting. It says here the F is always white in this case, never transparent. So if it's got the blue circle, then the F is white. When it's used as white, then it becomes transparent. So they tell you how it should be used on things, but equally, probably almost more importantly, how it shouldn't be used. They're protective of their brand. They don't want people making up their own versions, because again, it reduces the consistency of the brand image. Now, for your own business, you don't have to go quite as far as this, but I would have some basic guidelines for MJS Media. We have about a 25-page brand Bible that covers all of our parts. But for Brand Growth Academy, we've just got this single sheet. It just shows what the logo looks like on dark and light colors, what font we use, and the right colors. And it just means I can hand that to anyone. I could hand that to a graphic designer to say, design a poster here, and they'd know that it's the right color yellow or the right pink, and it would just mean that there's some consistency there. So it's well worth having a document similar to this. If you're looking to grow your business, then you can give this to other people. You can start the more advanced versions of these will have things like the sizing and when it should be used, how much space there should be around it, and so on and so on, just to make sure that it's consistent. And 71% of people say that an inconsistent brand presentation creates confusion. Like I say, things should be consistent. We do not like to be confused. We want to know what we're getting and when it's coming. One of the reasons, Amazon, love them or hate them, we like it. Order it, comes the next day. We just know that, and we trust that it does because it consistently does. So let's talk about voice. Now, I'm a big believer, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because it's not always just about the words, it's the tone that you use, but also that, yes, the words we use to say the same bit of info. So say you were going to offer people a discount and you were going to email them, you could very easily say, we're pleased to offer you a 20% discount on your next purchase. And actually using something like supermarkets, that's come from Marks and Spencer's, hasn't it? That's the way they would write it in their email. But if it was a bit more casual, a bit more playful, good news, you can snag 20% off your next order with us. That's probably ASOS or a company like that. The tone is different, but it's saying exactly the same thing. Get ready to save. Enjoy 20% off your next buy. I don't know, Tesco's probably with the get ready to save it. They love that, every penny counts and all of that. So that's probably the voice that they would use. To show our appreciation, we're giving you a 20% discount on your next purchase. Maybe a John Lewis. So you can see how you said the same thing, but by different people. And actually, I can see some people nodding there as I say who that probably was. You're like, actually, yeah, I can see how they would say it like that. We start to understand the tone of voice. And the reason it's so important to have a great tone of voice is that customers recommend brands they connect with emotionally. And we connect with people emotionally when we feel they're like us. We generally, we're tribes. We like people that get us is probably a good way. So when a brand is speaking to us, using a tone of voice that your ideal customer uses. So that's the easiest way to do it. Who is your ideal customer? How do they speak? What language do they use? What what words do they use, and speak to them like that. It's very easy to do if you've maybe got sort of demographics. A nightclub is going to speak to its student night clientele different than it is if it's doing a much older, you're going to the proms or something and my parents are going. It's a different tone of voice. But equally for you, just what's the important language, and even down to the industry they're in. If I was working with, say, healthcare, I might start to say things such as patients. If I was talking to someone else in business, I might say clients. If I was talking to a retailer, I might say customers, or whatever it is. Use the terminology that best represents the audience. So yeah, that's your tone of voice. And then it comes on to service. Now, getting a customer is actually only half the battle. Good marketing can be let down if the service doesn't match. A few years ago, I was doing some work with BT Business, just filming some sort of training videos, and there was a stat, and it stuck with me, that calling the help desk of BT Business was 5 times more likely to get someone to leave than the issue they phoned about. Because quite often it wasn't the, oh, I've got some slow speeds or this is happening. It was the fact they phoned up, they got passed from one person to another person. Oh yeah, we'll get someone out to you. They didn't turn up. The service was that part let them down. And that's the work that I was doing. We were filming, or I wasn't personally doing, but I was filming some videos. They were helping train their internal team to better serve people who had an issue. Service is a massive part of it, and I've seen this a lot with my background in marketing, that we position everything up front that it's going to be brilliant and it's going to be amazing, and we're the best company that's ever existed, and then that service doesn't match there. And actually, when expectations don't match, that's almost worse. If you're going to say, well, this might work, and then it might work, that's sort of not too bad. But when you say it's going to be really good in your marketing and then it isn't, that actually frustrates people even more. Consistency in your service is much more important than almost the standard of the service or of your offering. So try and explain that with an example. Who makes the best burgers in the world? I mean, I don't actually know, but I know that the company that sell the most burgers in the world is McDonald's, and they certainly don't make the best burgers, but they do sell more than anyone else because it's consistent. And it's the same when you land in a new city or you go on holiday. If you're looking for a coffee shop, chances are you're probably going to go with a Costa or a Starbucks or something like that, even though that small little independent probably does as good, if not better, coffee. But we're in a new place. Are we going to trust it? We like consistency. We know what we're going to get because it's a consistent service. The more, I say, budget hotel brands, your Travelodge, your Premier Inns, you sort of you know what you're getting. It's not 5-star, but equally the bed will be clean. It'll be fine. And if there's an issue and you go down and ask, they will probably sort it. You don't. When I say about consistency in service, this has nothing to do with the level that you're delivering your customers. It doesn't matter whether you're a budget provider, middle, or the top. You just need to be consistent so that people get to know what to expect, basically. And finally, one important part on this: if you don't deliver a consistent service, then that's when people moan, and that's when you get bad reviews. 86% of job seekers read company reviews before applying for a job. If you're ever looking to grow a team, or even just retain staff, you will know it's particularly hard to get good people at the moment. And if you've got bad reviews, then actually you're probably not going to get the applications that you'd hoped for. So just to finish off today, a little checklist that I think is really helpful. Have a defined message, have something like a visual identity document, or at least just know where your logo is. Make sure it's in one folder. You've got a light version and a dark version, transparent backgrounds, just so that when someone asks you, have you got a logo, you can ping them the right version. Consider what your tone of voice is. A good way to do this, actually, if you write out a load of messages that you feel are in your voice, you could ask something like ChatGPT, can you describe my tone of voice? And that might help say whether it's professional, formal, playful, and so on, so you can help explain that to someone else. and processes for delivery of service. As someone who's more of a creative, processes is always my sort of challenging part, but it enables us to deliver consistency. I know that someone's, almost like that internal funnel. I've done this, I've sent this, I've emailed this, they've got this happens. It just means that it flows and it becomes a consistent service. So that's all I've got for you today. Like I say, we're 25 past 9. I do want everyone to be able to get going for 9:30.